Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is a profile on Dr. John Smith, who is the president at Fisk University. And of course, we have with us to give us that profile on Dr. John Smith is Dr. John Smith himself. And Dr. John Smith, let me welcome you to the show this morning.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
And of course, I think that to deal with what I consider to be a very, very important topic, not only the profile on you, but to talk about your university as well. Let's start off by having you to give us an opportunity to give us some information about your background, your education, and some of the things that were eventually important in leading you to the presidency of Fisk University. And then we'll talk about some other things following that.
Thank you. Well, I'm a product of a little small town in Louisiana, in North Louisiana, called Bastrop, Louisiana. I grew up in a family that prided itself very much in education, and as education as a way to opportunity. So from the very beginning, this was an important element in our family. My mother received her baccalaureate degree at a late age, but it was important for that role model to be. My father was a businessman, self-employed, and the fact that he was so independent and proud also had a very important element of my character building. However, in my early life, I wanted to be a musician, and I simply wanted to play my instrument. And I played tuba, and an unusual instrument, and everybody thought it was unusual.
It is.
And it is. But I had a certain, I don't know what it was. People have asked me why I chose the tuba, and when that moment came and the band director said, "Who wants to play this instrument?" my hand went up, and I can't explain it any more than that. But it's been a love affair with that instrument ever since. But I transgressed from that when I was in college to be a band director, which was a form of continuing my musical activity. But somewhere along the line in attending Indiana University, working on my master's, I changed to wanting to be a professional performer on the instrument, which means to play that instrument. To me, it means to play that instrument as one would play a violin, a piano, to be as musical on that instrument, which is, for tuba, was a challenge. There's not a lot of people you can sit down and say, listen to a tuba recital.
Very good.
But after the master's degree and performance certificate at Indiana University, I went into teaching, and my first teaching job was at Grambling State University. Stayed there a year. Uncle Sam intervened, so I gave the Navy 4 years of my life as a musician primarily, and studied with some very important people on the instrument, and got my first professional position as a tubist, as the first African-American principal contracted player with the Oklahoma City Symphony Orchestra, and spent 6 years with that orchestra as its primary tuba player. At the same time, I started teaching again at Langston University, historically black university. Did that for 6 years and chaired that music department, and went from there to Florida, Tampa, Florida, University of South Florida, and taught there. Eventually became the dean of the College of Fine Arts there, and at that point, I did have to give up my tuba playing. And there I took a great deal of interest in education and people and their future, and how to design curricula, and also how to connect with community and others to support higher education financially and otherwise. From there, of course, the next job was here at Fisk University, where this was a surprise to me. This was not something I planned on doing in my life, but when I was called and said, would you be interested in a position like this, of course, I was flattered and humbled, actually, by being asked to consider an institution like Fisk University. So I said yes, not knowing where it was going to lead. And so here I am.
Good, very good.
At Fisk University.
Very good. Let's talk about Fisk University, this university that you now head.
Fisk is doing great things after coming out of a period where there are a great deal of financial stress on the institution. And over the last, let's say, 6 years, has done well in terms of regaining a lot that was lost. We are dealing with a very stable institution financially, and actually we are seeing growth. We have a student enrollment increase of 7% this year, 8% increase in our freshman class. We're seeing our test scores on students go up. We are seeing that the retention of our students is running between 84 and 94%. Actually, last year, the retention of freshmen was 91%. We're seeing Fisk mentioned in all the ratings, the magazine ratings, U.S. News and World Report. We're in the top tier of liberal arts institution in the southern region. We're listed in the Princeton Review, top 311 schools. So there are a lot of things that I call positive indicators for Fisk University at this time.
You know, and looking back over the history of this institution, and one thing that we've heard about dealing with the institution, and I'm sure that you're familiar with this aspect of it, that's the Fisk Jubilee Singers. Why don't you give us some information about your impression as a musician about the Jubilee Singers and your first contact in reference to understanding what that organization was all about?
Well, that organization has a terrific history, and its history dates back to 1867, and when it was formed by actually the gentleman who was serving as treasurer at that time of Fisk University, responsible for the money and trying to see that the university, this young university, survived. Well, as the story goes, it wasn't surviving very well. He had formed a group of singers to sing on occasion, and they began to rehearse with a lot of seriousness. And at the point when Fisk looked like it was about to fold, he took the last few dollars left in the treasury and took the young musicians on the road and said, I believe that we can raise enough money on the road to save the institution. Somewhere in the first year, he decided to change the music and started to sing spirituals. In those days, they were called slave songs. And it was at that time that the public began to take a different look at the Jubilee Singers, began to gather and listen to them, and actually began to produce funds that, as the legacy goes, saved Fisk University at that time and actually built a new campus and a new hall called Jubilee Hall.
And so all of that is a musical tradition, really, of Fisk University that you are now a part of and that you're now leading.
That's right. It's a rich tradition.
As a person who has been involved in music for a long time, that gives you an extra advantage in terms of having finding another resource that perhaps other folks have never understood the real value. Of course, folks have always understood the value of the Jubilee Singers, but I think that you bring quite a different perspective in terms of what that organization is all about and what can be done.
Yes, absolutely, and I think people are expecting this of me, coming to Fisk and having arts as a background. They expected me to reintroduce the arts as being very important to the institution.
You know, Dr. Smith, we're getting ready to come up to our first commercial break, and after which we'll come back and talk about some other areas. And this is one of the sort of touchy moments with me, because I really don't want to raise a question that would require a lengthy answer, and then to find out that we only have 2 minutes, 15 seconds
Appreciate
to go
that.
and then to have to interrupt. But we do want you to give us some information when we come back. Of course, we've got about a minute before that. We do want you to deal with Fisk University as an historical black institution and talk about historical black colleges, because I think that if you look at what is happening on the national scene now, I think that there's much more understanding and much more appreciation to what institutions like Fisk University and Langston University and many of the other historical black colleges have been able to achieve. And I think that there was a time, and you've already indicated, where people have sort of turned away from these institutions and understanding the importance of it. And what we want you to do as the president of Fisk University when we come back is to talk about historical black institutions and how you believe that these institutions can continue to provide the kind of education and the kind of professionals that are necessary even in the day in which we live. And of course, we want to do that when we come back, and we'll be back with you following this short commercial break.